that should be back on. Let me fix this real fast. All right, keep can hear me now. All right. What I was saying. All right, here we go. All right. So that was 13 reps. I like to do 15 reps, but I'm trying to build back up to it. Like I said, switching to the night somehow made me less effective at lifting. So I don't want to go back down too far. All right, this is still the 50 pounds, 22.67 kilograms. All right. King Barrel, I don't know if you heard me then, but I was asking, can you see all of like the traditional constellations from Australia that make up like astrology, like Leo and Sagittarius, all those ones? So I know you guys see different, like you guys see the Southern Cross, but do you see all of the, like Scorpio and all those? And if all right. Well, still doing better than last week. Kimbro says there are some overlaps and some we can't see. Does that affect how many people keep track of astrology in Australia? So I know people like astrology here as like more as a passing fancy. But I'm not big in astrology. King Burrell says, I would say so. I feel like it's probably the same amount of popularity. I have a theory, though, that the time that you're born may affect your personality based off of your exposure to people. Like in the US and in different parts of the country or the world where you have more rain and darker winters, people would get like more and more grumpy and more depressed. And I would imagine that if you were born in a time where people were more depressed and that was your first exposure to people, it could possibly have some effect on your personality and how you develop. So there would be some similarities and just similarities too about your mindset at different points of the year as you get closer to your birthday or your birth month. I think there would be some like points where you may have the same thoughts. You know, like 6 months from your birthday, you might think, man, like that's half a year gone, and feeling the same way as other people that are on that same path. I don't have any facts to back that up, but it was just a thought I had. I had this friend, this guy that I worked with, and his birthday was like a week after mine, which put him in a different a different sign, and he was very timid in comparison to me. So I would joke with him that if he had just been born 2 weeks older or 2 weeks earlier, he could have been a lot more bold of a person and less timid. Because I am very much, a lot of the attributes for my sign seem to carry through in my life. And the same for him, which I thought was funny. And I don't know if that's true. He may have been a timid fella under any sign. Kimbrel says, like, it's kind of fun, but I don't like taking it too seriously. Yeah, I'm not a fan of like reading my horoscope or anything like that, because one, I don't think the people that write a lot of horoscopes themselves believe it, and are not doing any real like research before they put it out there. And I just don't want someone's flippant opinion having any effect on my day. You know, like, I don't want to think like, oh, like something bad's gonna happen today because somebody wrote it down, and then maybe it would make me more cautious when I should have been less cautious, or not take chances or something. That I don't want someone else influencing my life in that way. Plus, I kind of like what Mr. Weasley said. You can't trust anything if you can't see where it keeps its brain. That guy in the chat says Tim's resolve to get fit was quite stout. He worked out hard without a doubt, sweating through each strenuous mile, hoping his efforts would bring him a smile. Oh, thanks, man. That was very poetic. I appreciate that. Kimbrel says, I tried looking into it. Seems like the major constellations I can't see down here are Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Cephas, and Cassiopeia. If you can't see Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, what do you guys use if you're out hiking to determine north? If you don't have a compass, are you guys just out of luck? That was really nice, the guy on the chat. Appreciate that. I like the use of the word stout. It was very good word usage. Although I haven't ever dedicated myself to studying poetry, I've always been a big fan of poetry and rhymes. Obviously, there's like Edgar Allan Poe's favorite, but read a lot of poetry. The only time I got tired of poetry is I think it's Queen of the Damned, and Anne Rice started like each chapter with I think it was like her husband at the time's poems, and I couldn't figure out why she was doing that because it wasn't always particularly great poems in my opinion, and I didn't know she was just trying to throw him a bone, and I always was like felt bad for him if that was the point, or I always wanted to know, did he like guilt her into it, or did she really like his poems that much that she would put them in her book? Hero says there's not really a particular star you can follow, I don't think, or if there is one, it's not common knowledge. I'd have to look it up. When I was a kid, you like read about Harriet Tubman and slaves escaping from the south to the north. So they used the North Star to navigate. And then on cloudless nights, they would use, according to this, the stories I read, the moss would grow on one side of the tree more than the other. So if you could feel the moss, you could tell which way to go. All right, this is the 40 pounds, which is 18.14 kilograms, I believe. Timofeo says his dumbbells are hard, his floor pad is wavy, and works out enough to eat biscuits and gravy. Oh, thank you, Dad. On the topic of poetry, my wife is not well versed in Edgar Allan Poe, and we were watching a show recently called the Fall of the House of Usher. It's on Netflix, I think, and it was just riddled with Poe references that she missed, which gave me the advantage because I would be able to know what was happening before her. So then I tried to like explain when they were coming up what was it. Okay, King Barrel says, according to Google, you can kind of approximate south using the Southern Cross, Alpha Centauri and Beta Centauri, but it seems complicated. I was thinking that. That's why were those two guys, the two explorers that first tried to traverse the outback to go through the desert, probably why they had such a hard time. I don't have the easy star maps. I can't think of the guy's name. I know he's famous, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. I know he tried bringing camels, I think, down there, and wanted to use camels across the desert. I can't think of his name. There were two of them. I want to say it's something in Burns, but I can't give it off the top of my head. It's gonna occur to me way later. Fun fact: we have Afghan caravaneers help us map the outback. Yeah, what was the name of those two guys? They were like famous screw ups, like because they made a lot of mistakes trying to get across the outback. And I'm pretty sure they brought camels, but they did something with the camels, and I can't remember what it was. That was like a big mistake. It was like a comedy of errors. I can't remember. Murrow says, which is why we have the largest camel population in the world. We have a big train line that goes through the entire outback from top to bottom called the Ghan. I didn't know you guys had the largest camel population. Thank you for teaching me something new. I think it's like it's how like Texas has the most tigers. They either have the most tigers, period, or the most tigers in captivity. But I think it's the most tigers, period. But don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. I learned that camels get this like kind of disease where they won't eat or drink. And the way they solve the problem in the Middle East is they have them swallow, I think, an asp or a viper, but they force them to swallow a poisonous snake, and that causes them to cry, and then they just are fine. So Saudi Arabia imports camels from Australia. That's funny. That's kind of like how China buys rice from California. Things just changed. I've said it before. I just want to know who was the first guy that came up with the idea of force feeding the camel a snake to get it to drink and eat again, because that seems like a very bold move. Or if he was just mad and he was like, you won't eat anything, I'm gonna make you eat this poisonous snake, and it just worked out for him. I don't know. Murrow says, whenever I think about things too much, I start thinking like, who was the first person to discover this? Like when you think about bread, isn't it weird? Like who found the first wheat and yeast, mushed it up and mixed it together, and left it to grow, and decided to burn it? Well, I have a less than popular view that and if you don't believe in the Bible or God, it's easy to discount. But I do think there was enough, or there's something that a lot of early technology was taught to people by God or by angels. And it sounds crazy and it's easy to dismiss, except when you look at too all outside of Christianity and the Bible, there are tons of people that have stories about gods or aliens or divine beings teaching them things. And it wasn't this idea that they came up with it alone. I mean, just look at the story of Prometheus and fire. It's the same thing. A god gave them the technology for fire. I think as much as we'd like to toot our own horns I think some of it was taught and by design. Kind of like when you see bees and ants and wild animals doing incredible things. I think it's by design. But I could be wrong. Somebody could have just figured it all out. But even when you talk about current inventors and current scientists in the last 200 years, you'll even find with them there's a theme where they ascribe their inspiration to God or to something outside of themselves. And that could just be a person's need to be humble in face of their genius, or it could be what it really is. But there's an interesting amount of scientists that attribute their breakthroughs to God or a heavenly being. And I think we, in this day and age, I don't know about in Australia, but in the US, we tend to dismiss any concepts of the the past that doesn't meet our narrative as being just wise tales and fake. But it's pretty interesting that they all have a consistent theme in their stories of how they learn things. King Barrel says, I mean, so much of human history is so unknown since we've been around for tens of thousands of years. But writing things down has only existed for the past like 5,000 years. Would you say you're a religious person? Not in the sense of your average, like, oh, I'm a religious person. I'm that person. I would say I believe in having a relationship with God versus a bunch of strict ceremony to follow. But no, I believe in God and I believe in the Bible and I believe in Christ. But I'm not a Catholic or a Lutheran, or I don't have a strong sense of ceremony and stuff that some people do. I believe in more you need to have like a one-on-one relationship with God. And I do think in a lot of traditional religious ways that's difficult to achieve because of the weight that certain things a church or different churches and doctrines can put on you. I think it's so in a traditional sense of religious, no. I think the important part is to have a relationship with God. I think that's possible. But that's something you got to figure out for yourself. I think everyone has that opportunity. Hero says, I wouldn't know how to define myself. I guess agnostic. I don't really believe in anything, but I'm not against the idea of belief. That's a good way to start. I think that all truth, and especially when it comes to God, you can only get it through humility. And if you're going out and you're like, this is what I know, and you have a lot of pride, that's going to stop you from learning. And not just, religious truths, any sort of, time you go to pursue learning and knowledge, you have to have that spirit of humility, which is very present in being agnostic. I think there is a pressure in this world sometimes to pick a side. And unfortunately, if you rush into picking a side, you can pick wrong. So, being agnostic is a good start. It's kind of like, Bilbo Baggins, just starting down the path with the dwarves. It's the start. Give it some time and you'll kill yourself a dragon. I think humility is the key to learning. And without it, you might memorize facts. It's easy to memorize facts without humility. But to really learn it, you've got to be open. King Barrel says, I grew up Catholic, but I just found that organized religion wasn't helpful to me. So I guess that I'm culturally Catholic, but I've not been in a church in years. Well, you don't have to go to church to get closer to God. I would definitely, when you're curious enough and you're willing, it's always easy to grab a Bible and just open it up and see what you see. King Burrell says, I kind of been taking the Marcus Aurelius approach to religion and belief. Have you heard his quote before? I've heard a lot of Marcus Aurelius, but you'd have to tell me which quote you're specifically speaking to. Let's see. Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, then they will not care about how devout you have been, but will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by. There are gods, but unjust, then you should not want to worship them. If there are no gods, then you will be gone, but I will have lived a noble life that live on in the memories of your loved ones. Timbrell says, sorry, kind of a long quote, huh? No, it's a good quote. It's definitely something to ponder and consider. If living just a good life was enough, I'd say he was right, but I think there's more to it. Definitely good to live a good life though, and not just go out and burn and slash everything for the heck of it. But there's a lot I started reading some Marcus Aurelius one day, and the only thing that bothered me is about him is he was so smart and so brilliant, and I liked a lot of what he had to say. That the thing that I thought was sad and unfortunate is he was so close to the time of Christ. He could have easily spoken to people that could have given him firsthand or secondhand knowledge of Christ, and I think that it could have been more profitable to him. He says, I like the quote because it reminds me the most important thing is to live a good life that is kind and just to those around you, and whether or not God exists, it should all fall into place. Well, I believe if you sincerely set yourself on the path of living a good life, again, I think you will find God, and it may not be tomorrow, it may not be till the road's end, but if good and truth is your pursuit, I think it will eventually lead you to God. When it comes to quotes, one of my favorite is Sun Tzu. Did you ever read The Art of War? I would have loved to seen Sun Tzu and Marcus Aurelius have a chat. I think that would have been an interesting conversation to observe. I know of it. Kimura says never sat down and actually read it though. It's a super easy read. And you can get it for free a lot of places off the internet. But The Art of War is a great book. I as you can see, I'm a fan of Superman, and I read The Art of War because in the show Smallville, Lex Luthor always quotes it. And finally I was like, hey, let's check it out. Let's read The Art of War. And I really liked it. It's a good book. It's fun. If you ever play Risk, or any role playing game that's like Risk or War, it's a good book to read. It helps with Risk. I actually I was gonna do chest flies, but I'm out of time. I gotta get my kids down. Is that a breastplate behind you? Yes. Yes, that is a breastplate. Oh, and I got the helmet. My brother randomly, while I was visiting him when he was in college, decided to buy that for me. I don't know why. He was so excited when he bought it. I've definitely incorporated it into a lot of Halloween costumes and stuff. It's a lot of fun, especially the breastplate. You can use it for anything from being the knight to gladiator to I've used it for being a vampire slayer for fun. Kimura says that's cool for cosplay, or you just wanted to have it because it's cool. My brother wanted me to have it. I don't know if I would ever have bought it myself, but my little brother wanted me to have it, so I was like, "Yeah, you want to buy me some armor? I'll take it. Can't say no to a little bit of armor." Yeah, it was nice. So one of these days, I'm gonna complete it with some more stuff. I want to get a shield. I want to get a good shield. That's an actual practical shield, just in case, anything ever goes, out of hand. I think having a nice shield. Big fan of swords. I got quite a few swords and knives. So I think melee weapons are equally important to guns. I'm sure, being that you're Australian and don't have access to firearms the same way that we do in the States, you probably appreciate knives and machetes and stuff. My favorite is I have a modern take on a Roman short sword, and I have a gherkin that is just a beautiful, heavy piece of metal. That just you can just annihilate somebody's skull with this thing with one swipe. I love them. Kimbrel says, if you could be a warrior from any ancient historical era, which would you want to be? Man, um, that's hard. That's a hard one, man. I would say Roman era or the Greek era. You know, when you had some armor, but it wasn't, so heavy, and before arrows were good enough to pierce it, to where it made more sense on the battlefield. I think once arrows were better than the armor, it was kind of pointless to be so clunky. Um, but I could go for that. But all right, I gotta go. I'm gonna be in trouble with my wife, and I don't want to be in trouble with my wife. Thank you guys for hanging out. I really appreciate it. Thank you, King Barrel, for all the conversation. You're always fun to chat with. All right, guys, take care. I also like being a pirate. I got a really good pirate costume. I've been building my pirate costume for years, just adding more and more to it. So, all right, thank you very much. God bless you guys. Have a good Thursday and good rest of the week.